Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're here today because what we're about to unpack is one of those stories that sounds simple on the surface, but becomes more complicated the deeper you look. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's talk about a controversy that has suddenly pulled global attention toward Prince William and his signature environmental initiative, the Earthshot Prize, a project that was meant to be about hope, innovation, and saving the planet, but is now facing intense scrutiny because of renewed shockwaves connected to the name that continues to haunt powerful institutions across the world, Jeffrey Epstein. What makes the situation so explosive is not just the allegations themselves, but how quickly a narrative can form when royalty, global philanthropy, and scandal collide. Headlines are claiming that an Epstein-linked donor has put the Earthshot Prize under the microscope, and even though the connection appears indirect, the mere association has been enough to ignite a firestorm across media platforms. Because in today's digital age, perception spreads faster than proof, and once a story gains momentum, it becomes almost impossible to slow down. But to truly understand why this matters, you have to step back and look at what the Earthshot Prize actually represents. Launched in 2020, it was designed as a bold moonshot-style challenge to encourage solutions capable of repairing the planet within a decade, offering millions in funding to innovators tackling climate change, ocean protection, and biodiversity loss. It positioned William as a forward-thinking leader eager to redefine the role of the monarchy in a rapidly changing world, shifting from tradition toward tangible global impact. However, operating at that scale requires partnerships with governments, corporations, and wealthy donors from across the globe. And that is where complexity enters, because when massive funding networks are involved, the backgrounds of every individual partner cannot always be perfectly controlled. The current controversy centers on a powerful businessman associated with a company that supported the project, whose past contact with Epstein is surfaced in newly released documents, prompting critics to question whether the charity's vetting processes were thorough enough. Supporters argue that large organizations rely on professional due diligence teams and that there is no evidence William personally knew of any problematic associations. Critics respond that the monarchy's symbolic authority demands the highest possible ethical standards, and that reputational risk alone should trigger deeper examination. This clash of perspectives has transformed what might have been a technical governance issue into a global debate about accountability, privilege, and trust. And the situation escalated further when William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, issued their first public response to the latest Epstein revelations, saying they were deeply concerned and that their thoughts remained focused on the victims. The statement was brief, carefully worded, and notably avoided direct references to specific individuals. Yet its significance lies in the fact that senior royals rarely comment on controversies unless the pressure becomes impossible to ignore. The timing was especially important because new allegations and documents have intensified scrutiny on Prince Andrew, whose long association with Jeffrey Epstein previously triggered one of the most damaging crises in modern royal history. By emphasizing concern for victims, the message attempted to acknowledge the human cost of the scandal while maintaining distance from the legal and political implications surrounding Andrew. However, critics were quick to point out that expressions of concern are often seen as the safest possible response, offering sympathy without addressing deeper questions about accountability, transparency, or institutional responsibility. At the same time, public frustration has reached levels that spill into everyday encounters, even affecting King Charles III, who has faced heckling from members of the public demanding answers about what the family knew and when, illustrating how deeply the scandal continues to resonate beyond headlines. It has become a symbol of broader dissatisfaction with elite privilege, fueling debates about whether powerful institutions are truly held to the same standards as everyone else. The controversy surrounding the Earthshot Prize exists within this larger climate of distrust, which means even indirect associations can provoke intense reactions because many people no longer separate individual projects from the institutions behind them. Online discussions have amplified every angle of the story, with some voices insisting that the scrutiny is justified, given the seriousness of the Epstein case, while others argue that the narrative has been driven more by speculation than confirmed facts. This polarization reflects a wider breakdown in public consensus, where audiences interpret the same information in completely different ways, depending on their prior beliefs about the monarchy, wealth, and power. Meanwhile, media coverage has leaned heavily on dramatic framing, emphasizing links, connections, and unanswered questions, which keeps the story alive regardless of whether new evidence emerges. Images accompanying these reports often place William, the businessman connected to the donor and Epstein, in the same visual space, creating a powerful impression of association, even if the relationships between them are indirect. This visual storytelling technique can shape perception more strongly than written explanations, because viewers process images instantly and emotionally, rather than analytically. The Earthshot Prize itself has therefore become entangled in a narrative far removed from its environmental mission. Discussions that were once about climate innovation are now dominated by questions about donor vetting, governance structures, and reputational risk. Critics argue that organizations operating under the banner of public trust should anticipate these risks and implement stricter screening processes. Supporters of the project counter that large-scale initiatives depend on complex networks of funding and that holding them responsible for every past association of every partner may be unrealistic. Yet that argument does little to calm those who believe institutions linked to national identity should meet higher ethical thresholds. The emotional intensity surrounding the Epstein case further complicates any attempt at nuance because it involves serious crimes and real victims whose experiences transformed public tolerance for elite misconduct into near zero. For many observers, the issue is not simply about one donor or one charity, but about whether powerful figures ever face meaningful consequences, or whether systems are designed to shield them from scrutiny. As additional documents continue to surface, the uncertainty surrounding what might still be revealed keeps the story in a constant state of suspense. Each new disclosure renews questions about who else may be implicated and whether any institution connected to those individuals will be forced to respond. The royal family's cautious communication strategy reflects awareness that any misstep could escalate the situation further. Yet silence can also be interpreted as avoidance, creating a dilemma where speaking risks inflaming controversy and not speaking risks appearing indifferent. This balancing act has been evident in the carefully limited statements issued so far, which acknowledge concern without offering detailed explanations. For critics, this approach reinforces perceptions of opacity, while supporters view it as necessary restraint, given the legal sensitivities involved. Beyond the immediate controversy, the situation highlights the vulnerability of high-profile initiatives to reputational shocks originating from entirely separate events. The Earthshot Prize was designed to project forward-looking ambition, yet it now finds itself pulled backward into unresolved scandals, illustrating how interconnected global networks of power and finance can expose projects to risks beyond their control. Whether the scrutiny leads to structural changes in how such initiatives operate remains uncertain, but it has already demonstrated how quickly narratives can shift from inspiration to suspicion in the age of viral outrage. Social media ensures that no development fades quietly. Each statement, each headline, and each leaked document is dissected in real time, often stripped of context and reassembled into simplified storylines that travel faster than nuanced analysis. As a result, public perception may be shaped less by verified information than by repetition of emotionally charged claims. The continuing focus on Epstein's legacy guarantees that any associated controversy will attract attention because the case has come to represent broader anxieties about secrecy, exploitation, and the abuse of influence. These themes resonate far beyond the individuals directly involved, tapping into widespread fears about systems that appear unaccountable. Ultimately, the expanding scrutiny surrounding the Earthshot Prize and the royal response reveals as much about contemporary society as it does about the specific figures at the center of the story. It exposes a landscape where trust is fragile, where institutions are expected to demonstrate moral clarity, yet are often structured in ways that make such clarity difficult to achieve, and where the boundary between legitimate investigation and performative outrage is increasingly blurred. As long as new revelations continue to emerge, the pressure on everyone connected to the scandal will persist, regardless of their level of involvement, making this not a temporary controversy, but part of a longer reckoning with how power operates behind closed doors and how the public chooses to respond when those doors are forced open.